Let me tell you something that might blow your mind. Your avoidant ex didn't forget you. They didn't move on the way they made it look. What they did was pause, emotionally freeze, and now you're sitting there questioning everything, wondering why they walked away like it meant nothing. But here's the truth. Avoidants don't come back fast. They come back slowly and silently. And when they do, it's not because they suddenly missed you. It's because they finally felt safe enough to face what they ran from. When your avoidant ex pulled away and told you they needed space, what they were really doing was reacting to a deep internal panic that had nothing to do with you and everything to do with their emotional wiring. See, avoidants don't break up the way others do. Their departure isn't a calm, thought-out decision. It's a defense mechanism. When things get emotionally intense, when the relationship feels too close, too real, too vulnerable, something inside them screams danger. That's because emotional closeness for an avoidant feels like a threat, not a comfort. And when that threat feels overwhelming, their mind and body go into escape mode, not because they don't care about you, but because their nervous system is triggered by the very intimacy you were trying to build with them. At this point in the timeline, avoidants are not thinking with clarity. They're operating from fear. Their thoughts become distorted. They convince themselves they need to leave to find peace, or get clarity, or work on themselves. But the truth is, what they're really doing is trying to escape the intense emotional discomfort that love stirs up in them. They don't process the breakup like you do. While you're sitting in the wreckage trying to understand what went wrong, they're already out the door, relieved that the pressure is gone, but not healed, not better, just numb. This is what makes it so confusing for you. One day, things seemed good, maybe even great, and then suddenly it's like they flipped a switch and disconnected. No explanation that makes sense, no real closure, just silence or cold detachment. And that kind of abrupt withdrawal messes with your mind. You start replaying every conversation, blaming yourself, wondering what you did to push them away. But this wasn't about something you did. It was about something that got activated in them. Love activated their deepest fear, the fear of being known and not being enough, or the fear of losing themselves in closeness. So they run. They might not pack their bags and physically disappear, but emotionally they're gone. They stop texting back, they avoid conversations, they shut down. And when you ask them what's wrong, they say things like, I just need space, or I'm not sure what I want. But those phrases aren't answers, they're symptoms. Symptoms of someone whose inner world is spinning with fear, shame, and confusion. They're not taking space to reflect, they're taking space to escape. What's crucial to understand here is that this initial escape phase isn't about healing or clarity, it's about self-protection. It's the emotional equivalent of pulling the fire alarm and running out of the building. And just like someone fleeing a fire doesn't stop to grab their favorite book, your avoidant ex isn't stopping to consider how this impacts you. That doesn't mean they don't care. It means they don't know how to care while they're drowning in their own fear. Their love gets buried under the weight of their coping mechanism. This is also why reaching out to them in this phase rarely works. They're not emotionally available. They can't receive your messages the way you want them to, because in their mind, closeness is the thing that overwhelmed them, and any attempt to reconnect feels like a return to that pressure. It's not personal, it's survival. But if you chase, beg, or try to force clarity during this phase, you reinforce their fear that love equals being emotionally trapped. So the most powerful thing you can do during their escape is not to follow them, but to stand still and start focusing on your own healing. Because their first step in this emotional timeline was fear, but your first step now must be power. Release. Your avoidant ex has escaped the intensity of the relationship. They move into what I call the numb phase. This is when it seems like they've completely moved on. They're out living their life, posting photos, going out with friends, maybe even dating someone new, and you're sitting there shattered, wondering how they can act like it never happened, like you never happened. But what you're seeing isn't healing, it's emotional shutdown, it's detachment. And this part is critical. Avoidants don't process pain in real time. They delay it. When someone with an avoidant attachment style ends a relationship, they don't immediately start grieving the loss. That would require them to sit with their emotions, and that's the exact thing they are avoiding. Instead, they distract. They throw themselves into work, hobbies, surface level connections, anything to create the illusion that they're fine. But underneath that cool, calm, and collected exterior, something entirely different is happening. They're suppressing. And what's suppressed doesn't disappear. It festers. During this phase, their nervous system is still recovering from what felt like emotional overload. So even if they miss you, they don't let themselves feel it yet. They've shut the door on the relationship emotionally, but they haven't even begun to unpack what went wrong or what they truly lost. Instead, they tell themselves things like, it wasn't right, or this is better for both of us. They intellectualize everything to avoid feeling anything. Logic becomes their shield, and their ego becomes their bodyguard. This is the part where people around you might say, they've clearly moved on, and you start to question your entire reality. But here's the truth most people don't understand. The avoidant X is in emotional denial. Their outward behavior doesn't reflect their inner state. They're not over you. They're simply disconnected from their own feelings. And that disconnect can last weeks, even months, depending on the person and their emotional depth. But it won't last forever. Because eventually the distractions stop working. When the noise fades, when the new fling isn't exciting anymore, or they find themselves alone on a random Tuesday night, that's when the numbness starts to crack. They begin to feel echoes of what they ran from. They remember your voice, the safety in your presence, the way you looked at them without judgment. And here's where it gets complicated. Avoidants don't remember love the way others do. They remember relief from being understood, relief from having someone who didn't demand more than they could give. Someone who made emotional connection feel just a little safer than it ever had before. That memory starts to haunt them. Not in a dramatic movie-style way, but in quiet moments while brushing their teeth, hearing a song, seeing your favorite coffee shop. These tiny reminders trigger emotions they tried to bury. But now, those feelings resurface, and they're no longer in crisis mode. The fear has calmed, and now regret begins to emerge. This is the start of emotional thawing. But, and this is vital, they won't reach out yet. Because feeling something doesn't mean they're ready to act on it. At this point, their ego is still in control. They're wondering if you've moved on. They're afraid you're angry. They still don't know how to deal with closeness. So instead of contacting you, they may withdraw further or quietly stalk your life from the sidelines, just trying to understand where you are emotionally. This is why your silence is so powerful in this phase, because it creates space for their emotional wall to keep cracking until they're forced to look at what they lost and why. After the numbness starts to wear off and reality slowly settles in, your avoidant X enters what I call the comparison trap phase. This is the turning point where they begin to realize that no matter how many people they meet, no matter how many conversations they have or dates they go on, no one quite feels like you. At first, they told themselves they wanted space and freedom. They convinced themselves that leaving the relationship would bring them peace. But now that they have that space, they start to feel something they didn't expect: emptiness. Avoidants often don't truly understand the depth of what they had until it's gone. While they were in the relationship, closeness made them feel overwhelmed. But outside of the relationship, they now feel something missing, and they don't fully know how to name it. So they do what many avoidants do. They try to fill the void. They may jump into another relationship or seek surface level attention. They may keep things casual or emotionally distant. But no matter how hard they try, the new connection doesn't hit the same. Because they're not just comparing people, they're comparing feelings. They're looking for that sense of safety and understanding you gave them, even though at the time they didn't know how to receive it. This is when the confusion begins inside. They start to question everything. Why can't I connect with this new person the way I did with them? Why do I keep thinking about the past? They might not even realize they're grieving yet. They're still afraid to fully face the truth that they pushed away someone who loved them. Not because that person wasn't right, but because they themselves weren't ready. And now, the loneliness they once tried to avoid is circling back, but this time it's tied to regret. Avoidants are notoriously self-protective. They're wired to believe that needing someone makes them weak. So even when they begin to miss you, their first reaction isn't to reach out, it's to bury the feeling again. But the problem is you've now become the standard they measure others against. And it's not about physical attraction or superficial things. It's about the emotional space you created, the comfort you gave, the way you saw them even when they didn't want to be seen. That's rare, and now they know it. But there's also another layer to this stage: fear. As much as they long for that familiarity again, they're afraid of getting pulled back into the same emotional intensity that made them run. So they hesitate. They tell themselves stories to avoid taking responsibility. It probably wouldn't work anyway. They've probably moved on, but deep down, those thoughts don't soothe them. They keep thinking about what it would be like to talk to you again. They replay conversations. They wonder what would happen if they just sent a message. This internal battle can last a long time because for an avoidant, reaching out doesn't just mean admitting they miss you. It means confronting the fear that caused them to push you away in the first place. And that fear is powerful. So instead of action, they stay stuck in overthinking. But the comparison doesn't stop. It grows. And the more they compare others to you, the more they begin to realize what they had wasn't just another relationship. It was something meaningful, something they didn't know how to handle. And the tragedy for them is realizing that maybe, just maybe, they let go of the one person who saw through all the walls and still stayed. As the avoidant X continues to sit with the quiet weight of comparison and the creeping awareness of what they lost, they enter what I call the quiet regret phase. This is where they still haven't said a word to you, but inside, they're wrestling with a storm of thoughts and feelings they can't ignore anymore. They've tried silence. They've tried distraction. They've even tried convincing themselves it wasn't real or deep. But the more time passes, the harder it becomes to lie to themselves. And so what they do now is observe from a distance. Avoidants rarely come back with grand gestures. That's not their style. Vulnerability still scares them. So they begin testing the waters from the shadows. They might check your social media, watch your stories, like an old post, ask a mutual friend how you're doing. They'll do anything that gives them a window into your life without risking being seen themselves. Because right now, they're driven by two conflicting forces, curiosity and fear. They want to know if you've moved on, but they're terrified to find out you have. They want to see if you're still angry, hurt, or cold, but they're scared to confirm that their silence has burned a bridge they can't rebuild. This phase is frustrating to watch from the outside because it looks like cowardice, but from their perspective, this quiet monitoring is safer than confrontation. Remember, avoidance fear rejection just as much as they fear intimacy. And right now, they are finally starting to feel the consequences of their actions. But instead of stepping into accountability, they sit in uncertainty. They wonder, do they still think about me? Did I ruin it for good? Would they even want to hear from me if I reached out? These questions spin on a loop. And here's the catch. During this time, they don't just miss you. They begin to romanticize you. Time softens memories. The fights get blurry. The good moments shine brighter. And the version of you they carry in their mind becomes more idealized. Not because they're delusional, but because emotional distance gives them just enough safety to see what they couldn't see when they were in it. They remember the way you understood them, the way you held space for them, the way you stayed steady when they felt emotionally chaotic. But instead of acting on these thoughts, they hesitate. They still haven't learned how to cross the bridge between longing and action. In this phase, you'll feel their energy, even if they're silent. You might sense them watching your stories. You might feel their name pop into your mind randomly, and that's not a coincidence. Emotionally, they're still connected to you, but they're paralyzed by fear of what they'll find if they reach out. Avoidants often need to feel absolute certainty that they won't be rejected before they make a move. And that's why this stage drags on. They don't know if you're safe anymore. And what's heartbreaking is you used to be the one place they did feel safe. That's why the regret feels heavier than they expected. During this stage, your silence becomes incredibly powerful because it forces them to sit with what they've done without the comfort of knowing they can just slide back in whenever they want. And if you've been growing, healing, and showing up for yourself, they notice from afar. They see your strength, your glow up, your transformation, and while part of them may be happy for you, another part aches because they know they're no longer entitled to that version of you. That realization, more than anything, is what starts to push them toward the next phase. But before they make any move, they sit in the shadows watching, waiting, regretting, and wondering if they even have a chance anymore.
After all the silent watching, the internal battles, and the slow realization of what they lost, your avoidant ex finally reaches the point where the fear of staying away becomes greater than the fear of reaching out. This is the moment in the timeline where they begin to circle back, but it rarely looks the way you expect.
It's not dramatic or emotionally expressive. It's not a long apology or a desperate plea to get back together. No, when an avoidant comes back, it's subtle. It might be a random message. Hey, I saw this and thought of you. It might be a comment on something you posted. It might even be something as minor as reacting to your story. But underneath that small gesture is something huge. It means their longing finally broke through their avoidance. Avoidants don't come back easily because doing so requires them to confront everything they've been running from: shame, regret, vulnerability, and the truth that they sabotaged something real. By reaching out, even in the smallest way, they are testing the waters to see if the door is still open. They're not just checking to see if you're still safe, if you still feel like a place where they won't be judged, rejected, or forced to talk about things they aren't ready to face. This first contact is not about closure, it's about hope. And as small as it might seem, it's a massive emotional risk for them. But here's where it gets tricky. They may not come back ready to talk about what happened. In fact, they might pretend like nothing ever went wrong. This isn't because they don't care, it's because they don't yet have the tools to deal with emotional conflict. For them, coming back is hard enough. Talking about the past feels overwhelming. So instead, they act casual, like they're just checking in, like you're just two people catching up. But behind that casual tone is someone who has spent months thinking about you, regretting what happened, and wondering if they still have a place in your life. This is also where your power comes in, because just as much as they've changed by realizing what they lost, you've changed too. You've had time to reflect, grow, and rebuild your strength. So when they come back, you get to decide, is this person still aligned with who I am now? Do they take responsibility for their behavior, even in small ways? Are they approaching me with respect, honesty, and a willingness to be different this time? The rest of the people aren't your people. And this too has to be captured during the time of transition. So when they come back, you get to decide, is this person still aligned with who I am now? Do you realize what you've done? Do you bounce back? Do you clean house? Are you a white knight? Do you get rid of things? Are you a fixer? Do you work to clean house? Do you clean house? Or are they simply trying to slide back into your life without doing the real work? Avoidants often hope they can reconnect without reopening wounds, but true reconnection can't happen without repair. So if they come back and you're open to listening, pay attention to their actions more than their words. Are they consistent? Are they emotionally available, even a little more than before? Are they showing signs of growth, or are they still avoiding difficult conversation? These questions matter because they reveal whether they're returning from healing or from habit. The truth is, When avoidants return, it's not a guaranteed happy ending. It's a test for both of you. For them, it's a test of their courage to face what they fear most: intimacy and accountability. For you, it's a test of your boundaries and your self-worth. You don't owe them another chance just because they finally reached out. You owe yourself honesty about whether they've truly changed, because this time, you're not waiting, you're choosing. And that choice should always come from strength, not loneliness. If you've been waiting for your avoidant ex to come back, don't just wait. Heal. Don't sit in silence, hoping they'll remember you. Rise. You're not someone to be forgotten, delayed, or chosen later. You are someone who deserves to be seen now. So when they come back, make sure the version of you they return to is one that knows their power, because this time it's your turn to choose.